Hello and welcome to this special edition of UATV Spotlight. I'm Drew Chamberlain. Thanks for watching. Today I'm joined by the 2023 University of Arkansas Johnson Fellows and distinguished alumni Troy and Gerald Alley. Troy, Gerald, thank you so much for being here. First off, you both are Johnson Fellows. Could you kind of tell me what a Johnson Fellow is and how you received that title?
The Johnson Fellowship is an award or recognition by the Johnson family for alumni who they felt have made a difference in their careers and their lives, and encourage those fellows to come back and engage with students here on campus to share their experiences with them as they went through life.
You both started Conrail, which is the leading African-American construction and real estate firm in Texas. Can you tell me about kind of the origins of how you both started that business and what it looked like in the early days, just starting it up?
I think it started, we both had an opportunity to go to grad school. And I entered, Troy got in University of Arkansas, graduated, did a great career in the engineering field. I came out of the University of Arkansas, actually went to Dallas and got an opportunity to attend SMU, went through that program, called him up and said, you might want to try this. And he came through, so we got into the environment of what is really the growth in the Sun Belt area, which was Dallas-Fort Worth area. So after being in SMU, we were exposed to a lot of real estate development and the real estate development process. Realizing very early on to be a developer, you had to have capital cash or rich family or something of that nature or contacts, which we had neither. So we said, let's build some instruments that can build a business through some kind of sweat equity and development services. So I got an opportunity to be a consultant in the construction area, and from that, got an opportunity to start a construction business. So that spin us out to say, instead of just having a one element of the service for the development, let's add the other element, which was real estate service, which Troy brought into it. So that was back from 1979 to 1980. And from there, we just looked at the opportunities, both from what opportunities there are in being part of the process of development. And from there, we had always wanted to be developers, but 40 some years later, we're still doing the skill sets of development and still doing development. So
now, can you guys tell me why it's important to have not only diversity in your business, but your opinion on how other organizations could improve with having diversity in their organization?
I think if I take a shot at that, and our diversity is not limited to just ethnicity, it's exposure. For a not major company, we have individuals in the organization. We have 14 different languages spoke, all kind of ethnicity. And we find at a global market, because our vision is always not to be just Texas, not to be the United States, be a global service business. So we believe out of all of the resources and capability, why look just in the segmentation of where you are, but you're going to learn so much from other people that you didn't have exposure with, which allows you to be a better provider of services, because you know not only what your customer wants, but their customers want. So that has been sort of our cornerstone, how diversity is an element of profitability, growth, sustainability, and all that other nature.
And what as Gerald said, diversity not only look at ethnicity, but the diversity of different people's ideas. And as a consequence, we see that we can have people that come with ideas that we might not have ever thought of because we hadn't been exposed to it. So real diversity is a mixture of different ideas and thoughts that bring to the table that you can take advantage of. And that way you can make your company as well as your organization a stronger competitive company within the market.
Yeah. How does your business look now as compared to when you first started?
I think in a way it's a lot different, in a way a lot the same. It's personal engagement, communication, and being dreamers, but executing on that dream. And I think as the organization now is going through another organizational change, as the founders roll out of the operation part, Now we look at it from a perspective of how can we be better in some of the, even though you can found a business or establish a business, there's always a need to keep transferring it and growing it from that process. So I think right now it comes away from not what the individuals that started, but what is the ideas they started with, and what is the culture, and what is the mission, what is the vision, and employing that to other people and getting them to understand that, and how they develop the growth of it will come through their efforts, but with that vision in place.
You know, I know that one of the key factors in any business or anything in life is the ability to understand change and evolve whatever your ideas and thoughts are and whatever your goals are. We all have goals, objectives, and dreams. But as we go through life, and that's including business, we see that those things end up changing. What you might have had yesterday might not be applicable today, but most importantly, you see the benefits that you can gain by looking at a broader perspective of the types of things that you can do, and that are things that are more receptive to what the market and the times are.
Are there any particular pieces of advice that you'd want to give to University of Arkansas undergrads who are aspiring entrepreneurs or aspiring future business owners or starters? Or is there a piece of advice that comes to mind that you would give to someone wanting to start their own business or having trouble with it?
Well, you know, it's interesting you asked that question, and part of what I have looked at over the years is, you know, we kind of start with education as the bedrock of being able to be successful. And true enough, without education, a lot of us wouldn't have opportunities that come back. What I kind of evolved to is that education comes in different forms. You can have a structured academic education, or you can have a practical experience education, all of which makes the person and the opportunities of your career or potential business an important part of being successful. So what I've tried to do is I push the educational, but I push it from, it's not just good enough for you to get the kind of academics that you need, but get practical experience, internship, and most importantly, connect with people that have had experience that you can learn from, because we only have a certain amount of time to kind of put the rocks on the road and be able to do the things that we want. So if you can expedite it by not stumbling over things that you might have taken a couple of years to learn, but taking that experience from people that have experience, you're further along on the route. So I tell students, and I tell anybody that is interested in, quote, going in business, is try to seek out people, but also seek out opportunities, but also realize that the opportunities and the education that you get by having relationships are, in fact, part of your total education and your ability to be able to learn.
Short term, long term, and like Troy said, you get a combination of that. I think anybody seeking to go into business, there is, you know, a business concept starts, it could start at a bar with a couple of beers. And the difference between lunching and not lunching is what you do that morning after you had that good evening with the beer, with the great concept. And the question is, what are you willing to sacrifice to convert this from a good time that evening versus, is this going to be a commitment? The other thing that a lot of people take the long impression in going business, I want to be rich, I want to be successful financially. The question really becomes, what are you passionate about? And if you have a passion for something, and if it can economically give you a return, now how long you can be passionate about something and it's not an economic return, is the difference between a business and a hobby. A hobby you can be passionate about, it doesn't have an economic return, but you're passionate about it, and that's fine, and put that in perspective. I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that understanding what your passion is and understanding what you're willing to sacrifice to convert that passion into something can be self-generating. And even you look at sports, and you look at sports players who love the game, even if they don't go to the NFL or the NBL, that they tend to love the game, and they do it maybe in intramural, or they coach from a little league team. They still love the game. They may work downtown or somewhere else doing financial planning, but they are coaching as a passionate. So I think you almost have to clarify that in your mind, what you're willing to do. I wouldn't say give up your passion, but one is something you have social benefit from and a personal benefit from. I think the other thing that a lot of people in business think, if they have a certain skill set, sort of what Troy said, how do you leverage that to communicate that to other people where that, because business, everybody has a product and service. Being chosen to use your product and service comes from usually relationships. And you have to put that on a short-term or long-term basis. Which one you need to get the opportunity right now, which one that you just have a relationship that by the time it comes, you're prepared to handle it. So I believe it's that short-term, long-term. I believe understanding, what your passion is versus a business model, and what your sacrifice you're willing to make them sustainable.
And just to add, and everything what Gerald said is right on point. And I once heard a quote about, I can be absolutely passionate about being one of the Razorback basketball players at 5'5.5", right? That could be my passion, but the reality of it is, do I have the skill sets in order to be able to perform at a level that is competitive? So you also, what is it, and this kind of goes back to whatever you can get some return. What is it that you're really good at doing? Some people kind of advert back to, but they might be good at cooking, but they say, I really want to do this. And I've heard that if you in fact are good at what you're doing, and you also have the passion, you probably have the formula to be more successful than just, having a passion. Because it's so many of us, for whatever reason, can have a passion, but if you're not good at doing it, and you're not willing to spend the time to acquire the skills to get better than what you are, you just like everybody else. But I think, I think he hit the nail on the head. This deal is about, passion and being able to commit and being able to understand what are the real ingredients of successful business.
Is there a motto or a slogan that your family has that pertains to success or business in general that you guys have adopted? Is there anything that comes to mind, or a saying from either of your parents?
I think what I say internally to my family is that, I have 2 daughters and a son, and when my daughters were growing up, I became from king to dummy, right? When they're in high school, when they're young, they think you're the king. When you're in high school, you're the least intelligent person they can think of. And, as they got to be teenagers, the question always was, well, I talked to Katrina and she said this. And I'm saying, well, Katrina's in the 9th grade. How does she know more what I'm trying to tell you? And then after that, so we used to have these discussions all the time. And I came with the saying, it's links in the chain. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's about your grandparents and your grandkids. And you have to decide, are you gonna keep that link tight? If you don't even know your great-grandparents, I would never meet your great-grandkids. So it's really not about our discussion, it's about what is that legacy gonna do, and where will you fit in that legacy? Do you break it, or do you improve it and make it stronger? So I believe and I think my wife has had a lot to do with the nurturing, because in business, there's a lot of issues of stress. There has to be a calmer decider, a patient, a mentor, or a person that sort of holds it together regardless of what the outcomes are. And it takes that kind of connectivity that says, if we're going to try to create better people with better lives to have the impact, and say, and I'd say our cliche is, do good as you do good. So if you do good as you do good, it means if you have a great opportunity and if you do good in society with it, that's the real key to success. So I think that would be the cornerstone of what we try to shape into sort of humbling the process. You're not as big as you think you are. Then second of all, if you are provided with opportunity of success, not only did you benefit yourself, did you benefit others because you benefited yourself.
Now, going off what you mentioned earlier about the link, now, the importance of, family and the relationship you two both have as brothers, I mean, what has that link that you guys have shared for your whole life looked like with, growing up not only as brothers, but both being businessmen? I mean, has growing up together, being able to, start this company and all the things, all the accomplishments you've achieved, I mean, how has that been to be able to do that as brothers?
I think one of the things is that kind of binds you is first of all, family. And I guess the connection of family has been perpetuated through a series of things, as we grow up. And we have had the pleasure and the opportunity grow up in the same house, okay? And at a certain point in time, when I went off to school and Gerald came to school, but immediately after that, when I moved to Dallas, that we lived together. And one of the things that I think that you achieve is a closeness. When you live with anybody, you get a feel for who they are and what they are, but also it allows you to probably connect with them even more so. So if anything, family and the way that family operates, but also trying to understand that we are all different, but we understand each other from our differences. And a lot of times you don't, I have roommates, I did understand, but I didn't know all of the history about my roommate. He lived in Little Rock and he did this, but in our case, we probably knew more about ourselves, and then also a period of time that we lived together. But I don't know if we have enough time, but I wanted to go back to what is the link in our family in terms of what is our slogan, and if that is something that we can talk about. One of the things that I have experienced having grown up, I've gone through, when you live with somebody, that also a lot of the positive things that you can get from the experience. And my wife is very, very spiritual. And as a consequence, whereas, I can almost say that I was kind of like in the middle of the road in terms of spirituality, but just her constantly reminding me and the children about what is our real, quote, purpose and mission, And that in itself, she always tell us, say, if nothing else, what is it that you and you are purposely here for? What is it? And that purpose is always something that is a part of not only looking at yourself, but looking at each other. So that it ends up being a very helpful, and more important, something that we can, as a family, relate to.
Now, for my last question, I wanted to ask you both. You both have given back to the University of Arkansas in so many various ways, one of which is the Alley Scholars Program. And I was wondering if you guys can touch on not only the Alley Scholars Program, but just, your legacy at the University of Arkansas and what you've done to give back to it.
Well, one of the things, years back, when we started getting more involved, and I credit Gerald was saying, as he was saying, we need to get more involved with the University of Arkansas, And, we're kind of rocking along doing our business and stuff, and it was the whole idea of, how do we give back? But after we formulated the scholarship that came through the Walton School of Business and stuff, and he was saying, let's put some money and let's name it after our mother, Gladys Alley Memorial Scholarship. And then something really happened, and I was teasing with the people over the College of Engineering. When I was here, and I have no bones about it, was tough. It was really tough. And if I look back at it, I said, what can I do that if somebody else came after me, that they would have less of a struggle? So I went to the dean and told the dean, I said, what kind of quote unquote program or things can we do to, first of all, recruit more minority students into the College of Engineering? Because when I was here, 3 of us, and I was one of the 3. And I had no real partner in the struggles that I was dealing with. So he agreed to get funding, and we started ECAP, Engineering Awareness Program. So, but what I found out is that, yeah, we had the ECAP program, but that really covered getting students into the College of Engineering. But what other lessons learned or life things could be? And I thought about it, and I said, you know, what can we teach students that life is about not only the academics, but how can you relate to other students? And I encourage the students, I say, you go to University of Arkansas, you need to know people at UT, you need to know it at Baylor, you need to know UATV. And so I formulated this program with the first idea of trying to get them to connect with other students. Because what I also found out is the old axiom, you don't never know who is going to be your boss. You know, you leave here and somebody from UT might be your boss, okay? And I know there's a lot of competition between colleges and stuff, but it would be good to know how other people think at other different universities. So I said, let's put together a program where the students themselves can integrate with each other, learn each other, and also look at ways in which they can develop their career, and most important, a way in which they can see that they can give back and make a difference. So started the Alley Scholars, and we ended up having different types of programs. We did it for many years, and kind of COVID kind of put us down a little bit for a couple of years, but we retrenching it again. But 9 out of 10 times, all of those students would go away and they had established friendships with students from other schools that they would have never met. And they had a real good opportunity to be able to potentially give back. And then we give some small scholarships, and we started something that was a takeoff on the Shark Tank to try to get them to get interested in ways in which they could develop entrepreneurship. So I kind of threw it all together and tried to say, what is it that I can do and get more out of their stay and their relationships?
I think one of the things that I recall, and it's sort of a challenge to yourself, in 2001, there's a gentleman from the development office came to our office, and he knocked on my door and said he was from the University of Arkansas. And he said, I'd like to see if you want to support the University of Arkansas. And I said, why would I do that? And I started sort of venting all the trials and tribulations. And he said, so I understand you went through it and look like you've done all right with it. So how would you do it if you had the opportunity to help? And it hit me from the standpoint, I can say, I got past the obstacles, but it's sort of like what Troy is saying. What are you willing to do now that you have gotten past those obstacles? So that's when we said, okay, we knew our mother who conspired to get us both up here, which we were beneficials of, and now we have an opportunity to do something about it. So that's why we start supporting those students who were like us, because that was our really point to really make a difference. You can sit around and complain what doesn't work, and if you got past it, now you're perpetuating if you're not doing anything about it. So that started the first giving, and you know, giving is contagious. And I've learned through giving is more rewarding a lot of times than receiving. And the question that always asks ourselves, what can we do to make it better? And I think it brings on not only other students, but just engagement. I'm truly a person that loves to get people to get connected, not only at this level, but at that level. And I think a lot of times, a lot of students never have the opportunity to meet people that they never would have never met. And that means when they do meet those people, they don't know how to react. So the question that we always have to ask ourselves, how do we get people exposed? And once they're exposed, people can replicate you once they understand what you do. But if it's like they never been in an environment, never had the contacts, never had the relationships, expose them to that relationship, and then they can probably take away, they don't have to lead, but just the awareness and the osmosis of being around people that have gone through a journey that they're gonna have to go. They may find a way to go short circuit the way it took us to get here at this point. So I think exposure, giving back, and making sure they are exposed to the opportunities that they can say, well, they did all right, but now we're gonna build a business much bigger than that. We're gonna help many more people than that. If those yahoos could do this, maybe we can do that. A lot of times, it's sort of like, Troy went to the university and I had two other friends that went, and I always sort of smile at them. One was an engineer and one's an attorney, and we all hung around in the same neighborhood. And once Troy went to the university and then they came up, I asked that same question. Well, they are not that sharp. I mean, Troy was sharper than they were. And I said, well, maybe I'll give it a try. And I think a lot of times I wouldn't have taken that step unless I saw other people that I said, you know, I can hang out with them, you know, I can do this. I just have to apply myself. So I think exposure and understanding, instead of saying how hard it was from you and then you don't do anything about it, then you're part of the problem. So you have to be part of the solution. If you identify the problem, we have this cliche, don't walk in the office with a problem without a solution. If you walk in there with a problem, you're gonna walk out, it's still your problem. But if you walk in with 3 solutions, none of them may not work at the time, but at least you were thinking to try to resolve the problem. Yeah. So I think that's would be the key to how I would say exposing the students and figuring out different ways to expose their students. Give them environments where they meet people that they would have never met. Give them an environment where they see it's doable, because people replicate what they see can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. It's been an incredible honor. And I want to thank you all for watching this year's UATV Spotlight with the University of Arkansas's Johnson Fellows, Troy and Gerald Alley. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Drew Chamberlain. Go Hawks.